It's nice to see you all. We have a very interesting event for you this afternoon. We have an introduction to Islamic architecture presented by Amr Abdel-Azim. First, I want to thank our co-sponsor, the MSU Department of Art History and Design. And with that, let me go ahead and introduce our speaker. Amr Abdel-Azim is someone I've known for a long time, actually, since I was a child. And he is a pioneer in the area of facilities management and higher education campuses. He's currently a senior architect at Michigan State with over 15 years of experience here at East Lansing. He's been involved in a lot of projects. He's going to tell you a little bit about what he's done, his work. I can tell you that he's been involved in the building of various campus buildings, including Wells Hall, the B-Wing, and American University of Sharjah. I mean, he built from scratch. He was involved with that. So, and some interesting notes, he was formerly on the Egyptian national basketball team. So, please join me in welcoming Amr Abdel-Azim.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. Everybody can hear me okay? Delighted to be here this afternoon to talk about an interesting subject that's dear and near to my heart. And to put you in the mood, I made this presentation in Arabic, so if you miss any word, just let me know and I'll take care of it. Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Amr Abdel-Azim. I work here on campus as an architect for the planning, construction, design. I have a bachelor degree in architecture. I have a master's degree in urban planning from Michigan State University here. I got it here. And I spent all of my career working with higher education facilities. So that's where I spent the 20 plus years of my life. It's interesting that when I came here, I was learning English as a second language in this building here in the ground floor. So it's kind of nice building to me in terms of memory here. And I built a brand new campus, actually two brand new campuses in the United Arab Emirates, including MSU in Dubai. And I will talk about that in just a second. For those who are here on campus, or they might know some of these facts here, but it's one of the largest campuses that in the United States. 25 million square feet of facilities that we take care of, maintenance, planning, and all of that stuff. We have about $150 million worth of construction projects throughout the entire year. That's not including major projects that we're doing. So keep us very quite busy. And also this campus is considered to be one of the top universities that house students on campus. We have a lot of dorms. We have about 15,000 students that they live on campus with the operation that goes with that. Involved in a lot of projects. You might have seen it here on campus. One of them is a molecular plant. This was a new building. There was two buildings that connected two existing buildings. By connecting this with the new addition here, that became really the face of this whole complex and allowed people to utilize the research and equipments back and forth between using the greenhouses between the building. It was one of the early buildings on campus here that we had the concept of open plan for researchers. Instead of having separate rooms for researchers, we had this open plan that allow researchers to work right next to each other, think about ideas, talk about ideas, rub elbows a little bit better, and also share the equipment, the expensive equipment that they have in their labs. It was really a new concept that we introduced here. Again, this became the face or the entrance of this whole complex, and it's funny that both buildings think that this is our building, so it was really kind of belongs to both and added a new face to their operation. In the building itself, you have a lot of areas, formal and informal places where people can sit down and talk, share ideas, talk about ideas, take the opportunity of doing that. Don't undermine just a cup of coffee where you talk about what you have done in the weekends or what are you doing next and all of that stuff. I have a nice, well-equipped technology auditorium in this building that replaced really an old-fashioned one that was there before. Also was involved, as Dr. Muhammad mentioned, in building the Wells Hall addition. It's really an interesting project. You see, this is a new structure on the top of an existing B-wing. We had to thread literally the columns and the foundation of the new building into the existing one and come up with the addition here, as you see here, really ended up being a great addition to this whole part of campus. Beautiful outside areas that kind of link the education where people can sit here and watch and see people walking back and forth, you know, to the bridge. This is what the building looked like, very bland as you see it here, one story, nothing really special. And here when it's ended up with a facade that overlooks that park, so everybody in that building really enjoys the scene and on the outside of this historical place. This is from the Red Cedar Road. On the other side, as you see here, all of these doors you see here is really exit doors. It's nothing to welcome you in. And here with the new addition, that became a beacon and allowed people to walk through this building here to the other side. So this is one of what it looks at night. I've also been involved in so many different dining halls here on campus, at least 4 of them. This is Shaw Hall, in which we ended up kind of creating 3 different restaurants in the same setup. They serve different food, they have different setups, different lighting, different furniture, that they give their students, you know, the opportunity to kind of enjoy this. You can come to the space many times without eating the same food or sitting in the same place and enjoying the, you know, the different variety of that. More importantly, overlooking the river, which is a beautiful scene all year round. This is another shot at it. Also, I've been involved with a lot of historical buildings on campus. This is a Chittenden Hall. These old buildings did not have the regulations of accessibility, but to add a ramp right next to an existing building was a challenge. So we created this plaza and we worked out the ramp inside it, so we really don't see it as a plot thing object. Again, it's the historical building. It worked out great, you know, what we were doing. One of the latest one that we just finished designing, and it's under construction, is the Business College, of course. Most of you might have seen it on Shaw Lane. It's going to be really one-of-a-kind buildings on campus. It's going to have a place where students can sit and overlook the riverside. They can sit and talk and interface in this beautiful atrium setup that we created there. Beautiful lawn on the north side of the building that's facing the river, and you have a lot of activities that connect inside and outside. I was also involved in another university. It's called RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, that they had about $400 million worth of capital projects, really changed the face of that campus. This is a very interesting one-of-a-kind performing arts center. It was built on a sloped hill. The idea was to build the hull for the concert hall that looks like a ship sitting on that sloped hill. It's designed by a signature architect from England. Beautiful place. If you ever go to Troy, New York, make sure that you get the chance to look at it here. This would show you how we set this building in that sloped hill, built the stub here, and we anchored it all the way to the bedrocks to hold this thing so it doesn't slide down the hillside. Very interesting project. Also, one of the earliest interdisciplinary research that was built there, and it was really did a big change in what the university is doing and the face of that campus. Also was involved with the American University of Sharjah, beautiful campus in United Arab Emirates, as you see it here. This is what it looked like in June '97. We opened the campus in October '97, so you can imagine the amount of work that happened between this picture and some of these pictures that you see it here. Beautiful campus turned out. It also says Islamic Arabic architecture here with the domes, vaults, arches, and all of that. It's really a beautiful add to that place. Was also involved with MSU in Dubai. What they had here was not, the entire campus housed more than one university. And MSU was supposed to be the anchored university in that campus. And we went there and we actually took the first 3 floors of this building here, the main building of that campus. Unfortunately, in 2008, they had the economical fall down and things did not work economically, and MSU ended up pulling out of Dubai. We brought all the undergraduate students that were there to study here on campus, and we still have some programs on the graduate level. is what it looked, on the inside. But one of the things that kind of shaped my career, and especially with this Islamic architecture, was working with this Egyptian architect, world-renowned architect from Egypt, was way ahead of his time, in terms of sustainability, what to use. His name was Hassan Fathi. And this gentleman here had a lot of buildings, and his idea was always try to use local materials and local techniques. He built this whole entire village using this style that you see here from local materials, using the adobe. And using local materials, did not have to go to Europe to get the glass, and to China to get the steel. His idea is use the local materials and invest in local techniques. You have a lot of civilization behind these techniques. It got evolved throughout many, many years. And to throw it out, to bulldozer everything, and to build the same block that you see in different places without any recognition to the culture, to the place, the economics of that. Has an interesting book, this Architecture for the Poor, is how can you afford it? I mean, you have a big, huge problem if you're going to be importing everything that you need from different places. So having the ideas here of using local materials and local techniques, if you are in the middle of Africa, why should you go somewhere else where you have all the wood around you that you can use and you can utilize it to help the cause of building for the poor? He built here in the United States, in New Mexico, close to Santa Fe, this whole community. It's a beautiful community with the same concept of using mud brick and having the styles of dome and vaults. We start with the mosque architecture. Architecture form becomes really the vehicle of the content. They are really can symbolize, what they are for. This is really an important, fascinating things that how architecture design can reflect some of the thoughts of beliefs and all of that stuff. You will see here how this has been evolved and developed in Islamic architecture. Architecture not only communicates the looks and the shapes and the feel, it also has to function, for the purpose it was built for. Masjid simply is a place of bowing down. This is how Muslims perform their prayers. They pray five times a day during the day, and you can imagine having 5 prayers. That will take, you have to work your schedule all the way around it. The importance of a mosque, in the life of the Muslims and how this works, in places. However, you do not have to go to a mosque to pray. You can pray in your home, you can pray for any place that is dry and clean, as long as you can have it. But it's encouraged that you do it in congregation. And the style layout tells you a lot about the general Islamic thoughts and beliefs. But it varies from one region to the other, and you can tell, what is the difference in the looks and feel. This one here in Egypt, Sultan Ahmad Hassan, as you see here in the picture. This is in Spain. This is in Turkey. Many different shapes. This is an early mosque in Iraq. Some areas you see just an open plan, open to the sky up there. It's just some elements where to protect people from the elements. This is another one in Mali that has the same idea of open plan. These are different shapes and mosques, and you see here, you will see some elements that gets repeated in these various mosques to accommodate the function. But in terms of the materials, the looks and the shape, the colors, kind of picked from the culture that where the mosque was built. If you start looking at some of these ones here, really fascinating to me, how they use different materials to accommodate building different mosques in different parts of the world. Everywhere you go, you will find that taste of what that mosque was built in and what it represents for the culture that was built in. I was in Pakistan last summer, and visited this one here. It was built for 100,000 people, even though the city was only 50,000. It was really building for the future, building for accommodating for future planning and all of that stuff. This one here is in United Arab Emirates. Okay, when Muslims pray, they orient themselves towards Mecca. So any place that you build has to accommodate that orientation, how the building itself is oriented. And the mosque is not an isolated building by itself. It's really always connected with the sky. Nothing that should prevent it. You know, when they are protected from the elements, you should not be protected. Isolate yourself. The roof should not cut you off from the sky or the connection to the sky. Mosque architecture has certain elements, and we'll touch on those elements to show you how architecture design has reflected some of these elements, some of the faith on these elements that you see here. These are some of the mosques all over the world, and the number one element here we'll talk about is the dome. It's a very important central element in a mosque, and it's not a building that's enclosed on itself, like you would see in a church. If you see it here, the church, the dome and the ceiling kind of represents the sky, and the walls and the floors kind of represents earth. So when you walk in, you really kind of have this whole structure that kind of express itself in its own. In Islamic architecture, they changed the shape of that dome, and instead the way that looks like a half circle in a church, change it to a different shape, and I'll show you just a minute to make your life a lot easier expressing that. Here, on the left-hand side, you will have the one you would see the Byzantine church, and the other one here, you see a square that's built on this half arches, and then there is a circle, and then the dome itself. Every single thing kind of try to point upward towards the sky. Here's a look at that dome. You know, sits on a square, goes to octagon, then it goes on a circle. Again, narrowing down, pointing to the sky. And this is what it looks like, you know, when it's over with and done. The spheric form of the dome itself was modified to kind of point upward, like what you see up here. It's not just a half circle, again, pointing up to the sky, giving that feeling, that disconnection of going up to the sky, and that connection in the relationship with the sky. Arch in a mosque, in architecture, semicircle is avoided. Just to have one circle to the other, go from one side, it goes down to the other side, is avoided, and they try to use pointed arches and the show line of forces. This is, if you look at the first one here in A, as you see here, arch starts from one side and goes down to the other, while in different shapes, it always pointing up, and your eye can catch up that movement going up in the sky. Then in Egyptian mosques, they started to do these little variations. You know, that again depends on the reason and people's creativity and all of that stuff. And it started to have a narrower bottom, suggesting the sphere, to fly in the air, as if it's something that, as you see it here, it's not just a ball. This is something that narrowed down a little bit at the bottom, but it's pointing up, and it looks like it's flying in the air. And in Iranian and Central Asia mosques, this whole feature even they accentuated that even further, that it made look like a ball that is flying, as you see it here in variations of different mosques that were built in Asia. And the dome characteristic itself, using the dome as an element, is really interesting when it comes down what it does to a room like the one that we're sitting here. The hot air with that directions, so there will be adjustment in how you lay out the mosque itself, or the prayer area, and the rest of the entrance, the relationship with the entrance. If you look at here, up on the top, is the main entrance. This is Sultan Hassan in Egypt. You see here, this is where the street lined up. People come in, and then they turn around and they face the body of that mosque that's oriented towards Mecca. If you look it up here, this is kind of shows you, where you start and all of that stuff. Another function of that is symbolic, that when you enter the mosque, you leave everything that keeps you busy, and you kind of focus on what you're here for. This is a really beautiful meaning of that. Take that transition for people, just instead of that from one door to the other, it really gives you that transition. Coming from outside with a busy life and focusing on what you're here for. Another feature of mosque design is only one door. They only have one door in the mosque that symbolize the oneness of God. Symbolize also that you don't have a VIP entrance and you have the normal people entrance. We all one. We all equal when it comes down to where we're going, who we're trying to seek, and all of that stuff. So equality of humanity. Of course, that changed a little bit now with the requirements of egress and how that is required for a certain space, a certain number of people. You need to have multiple entrances. But that was the reason, or the thoughts behind having only one entrance. And in entrances, as you see it here, it's really kind of humble. It's huge and humble and lofty, that's kind of resists behind that welcomes people. Doesn't have a big, huge canopy and flash neon lights and all of that stuff. It really that kind of nice sitting back, receiving people and have with this huge scale when it comes down to that different places. And another feature in the mosque is what we call it christing. It's really, this is what crowns the walls of the mosques. And it would look something like that. And if you see this is kind of interesting, because the void is the same shape of the solid, body and soul, the connection between earth and air, in the sky. You have that equality that you see it here in the edge of that wall. The wall is not just a cutoff of this building from the sky. Again, this whole notion of how you connect it and what that symbolizes. It matches the void, yeah. That's also representing earth and the sky. Is joining the sky. Also, that lining up in a row kind of also symbolize the equality of mankind. This is another shape. Looks so bad. Then we come to a minaret. Minaret is a very important element, of course, in architecture, in Islamic architecture or mosque architecture. And they have this symbolization of connection to the sky. It gives that it gives it the vertical elevations and the elements and the looks, to the body of the mosque itself. As movement upward, as we discussed in many different places. Look at this, and you always can feel the connection. You always can feel that this building is rising, going up. This is in Cairo, Egypt. This is another mosque, Sultan Hassan in Egypt. These are all elements in different shapes and looks, but really have the same function of the minaret as an element that add that verticality to the sky. And architecturally, if you look at this, if I look at this line here, can you pick where this line is? Do you have a direction? Is this line going up or coming down? Really can't tell it. Could be anyway, could be both. And if I have another line right next to it, two parallel lines, again, doesn't give you directions. Those are just two parallel lines, it could be up or down. But if I have this line and start segmenting it, where larger areas bottom, then it goes up, your eye will go up. This is a direction, it gives you up direction to do that. Then we add also another element of those lines that are being parallel. They are kind of tilted a little bit. Your eye would get, or would be towards where those two lines would meet. So again, pointing up to the sky. Then if I add segmentation to these two lines, it would even force that or focus that whole feeling and sense. And that's exactly what the minarets would look like here. The bottom line is bigger, segmented, different shapes, up, segmented, and narrower, and pointing up to the sky. So it just shows you the sense of the feel, how this would look. The minarets changed the pointing of the building itself. This is Hagia Sophia in Turkey, before they added the minarets to it. Just look at the building here, look to see how it's a building that's contained and sitting underground. And when you look it up here after building the minarets, I mean, how that changed the whole looks and feel of the building, you know, as an element. Traditional Islamic, one of the most successful buildings when it came down to sustainability. That's another subject. You know, how these people, when they build, they always had in mind, how can we be, what we call it now, green design. Using local materials and local techniques. And we have seen from the variations of many different mosques that we showed earlier, using what they have beneath their feet. Coordination and balance between form and function. You know, not just the shape and the looks, it's also the function itself of what's happening inside that building or that facility. The elements to work side by side, they are not really contradictory. They all have the same goal when it comes down to the shape and what they try to do it. Complement climate, environmental, social, economics conditions. You know, they use a lot of the thick building walls that help with the hot climates that kind of prevent the sun from seeping through the building. It takes a while for that heat to transfer inside the building. That would be, by that time, it would be nighttime, and then the whole thing would reverse from inside to outside at nighttime. So that's another thought of using it. Using clay or brick was very common in a lot of these buildings. Inexpensive, durable, easy to find. It's friendly, you don't have a lot of different effects and all of that stuff. The materials are important to protect the building from external conditions. You know, the optical that looks at it, the reflection, the thermal conductivity, the heat transfer. That would have some trees that you might start seeing birds and seeing a lot of different things, you know, that comes with that as an element. The shading elements, of course, you know, the tree and all of that stuff that helps a little bit with the moisture and reduce the temperature, as you see it in many elements like that. Natural ventilation, considered to be one of the most important aspects of Islamic architecture. The airspeed, you know, the increase if you have a narrow tube. When the air comes through it, it kind of focuses that and increase the speed of the air movement, you know, from the top to the bottom. And it helps to get rid of the moisture and cool at night. So they created something that's called mulkaf, which is it's like a tower that kind of catches air inside the house, in a narrow shaft. And actually in the bottom of that shaft, they would put the clay bottles, so things like that they have water. It's like the refrigeration that we have currently with the cool air coming down. This would be where the water would be, and they can cool the water out. And it can help at night. This whole process, of course, you know, would reverse, reduce the dust and the sand that comes towards the house. These are some of the shapes, you know, but this is, if you look at the bottom here where the mulkaf is, the air would come in and come through the house, and it comes through out to the courtyard. It really kind of gives you that variation, and this would reverse that nice, so you almost have that nice wind ventilated areas. You can see here, allowing for the whole movement. I just came last night from South Korea, and it's, I was amazed with the many towers that they have. When you have a child that's living on the 26th floor of a building with no balcony and all of that stuff, how would they enjoy even the natural air, the natural environment? So some of these thoughts of the old traditional buildings, really they thought about a lot of things that including this whole notion of ventilation. Natural light, reduce the thermal load, yeah. When the sun is hitting the building, it adds a lot of load. I mean, when we build new buildings, we always think about the orientation of the building, which side of the building, how big the window is, how much we will have a heat gain, and that would determine the amount of mechanical systems that we need to have to ventilate air, the building itself. So that was thought of providing natural lights that would allow the sunlight to come in without the direct sun, without a lot of the heat, that comes with it. And they found out that reading and vision is 3 times better with natural lights than it is with artificial lights. Windows, it's considered to be really a hole inside your wall. Usually the R value or the resistance value of a window is much, much less than a big composite wall. So how do you deal with that? So they created something called mashrabiyah. And the mashrabiyah, that architectural element that allows wind to come in and would prevent the direct sun that really causes a lot of heat gain, and control lights on overflow and outside exposed. More importantly, the issue of privacy. You do not sit in a place where people outside can, if you need that kind of privacy, that would be provided. This is a mashrabiyah, as you see it here, sitting on an exterior window or exterior balcony that allows the sun to come in. As you see it here, could allow also the air movement, but doesn't give you the direct sun. I'm trying to cap up, and hopefully we'll have more questions since anything you have. I teach this class to a social science class here in Michigan State, just once every term. That class is learning about different cultures. I usually have the slide here. This is our beautiful beer garden. Asking them, why do you think this looks great? What's the beauty that you see here? And of course, the beauty here is the variations of what you see. Can you imagine if this was all the same plant or all the same flower? Likewise, cultures. Cultures are different. That they add up, they don't take away. So students will learn and understand, enjoy the cultures, enjoy people living in a different way, different lives, enjoy their food, enjoy their language. It's just that variation that adds up. Everything around us has that beauty of variations. You don't have the same tree. You know how many different types of oranges or apples that we have? All one is a little bit different, slightly different, and offers something different. So the message here is culture is a great thing to enjoy. If this was all the same, we would not have the same enjoyment that we usually have. This is very quickly, I wanted to go through it, and hopefully we'll have questions if you have any. Thank you.
Questions?
Was in Iraq last time in 2011, and there was a massive mosque being built, and I don't know if they finished it or if you had any knowledge about that. It was beautiful, it was massive though.
What is that, was in Baghdad?
Yes.
No, I'm not aware of that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, this is always going on. Building mosques is always going on.
It's supposedly the biggest one, well, apparently in the world they're going to be or something.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's huge.
They just had recently opened a big, huge mosque in Abu Dhabi. They would have been working on it for 10 years. They showed some of the photos of that. And it's again, taking all of these elements and trying to put it together. Sometimes they do it in a huge, vast scale, and that's I think what they're trying to do. And mosque, by the way, the big mosques usually being used for the Friday prayer. The congregation, everybody that come in. But within the district itself, every neighborhood, they might have multiple smaller mosques. The old way that they had is when they built these minarets, that somebody would get on the top of the minarets and make the call for the prayer. And as far as that voice would reach, that would be the neighborhood. And beyond that, they need to build another mosque in another neighborhood.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm actually really interested to get your thoughts, your assessment of the Kaaba in Mecca, and because one of the things that it would seem to me that they are actually importing things like for the marble floor, and then they just built that huge clock tower. So I'm just curious to know from an architectural standpoint, what would be your assessment of that?
I have been there actually, and I saw it. In my own opinion, it takes away from that focus. You know, when you sit down and see the clock, and now you see people wants to do the selfie with the clock and all of that stuff. It just takes away from it. And the whole notion of a mosque is really kind of focused about that. That by itself is a significant place that this is where they need to have their attention. You know, that's my own opinion. In addition, building that huge tower, that means you're building a huge foundation. You gotta go very deep. That might affect all the underground water and Zamzam and all that stuff. Yeah. Go ahead.
First off, thank you for the presentation. And similar to his question, what would be your assessment of the Registan Mosque in Samarkand, Uzbekistan?
Is that one of the ones that we showed up here, or
Yeah.
did they have it?
I think so, right? Yeah.
When I visited there, and I visited Lahore, and it was fascinating how people, they really made this a big, huge part of their current plan. Okay, these huge mosques used to be built for congregation on Friday. Usually you build it closer to the market, closer to the palace of the king or whatever. So it was a time for people to get together, a time for people to run to each other. So right now, because of the microphones and because of the huge different notion of how we build urban cities, has made that very different. But I love the way that they use local materials, that they have their own touch on it. And it's something that you would find it really in mosques and anywhere. It was not bulldozing everything and built the same McDonald's or the same Burger King. It really has its own nature from the environment itself and people's creativity attitude. Yes?
Thank you for the talk and the beautiful buildings, and I wanted to ask you, what's the social science course that you teach?
I have I gotta get you that number. Then the professor is teaching is Rich Hollow, so I don't know exactly, I can give you the exact number. That's the beauty about that class is they teach them different, little bit of history and also the variations of cultures throughout that history. So I thought, sharing that with them, they kind of get to see, different variations in different parts of the world. Yes.
I just came across this news a year ago, so I just pulled it up. It's a small mosque in Bangladesh by Marina Tabassum. Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
So it won an award, and it was thought to be one of the most sustainable mosques in the world. So I was just curious. Anyway, thank you so much for the presentation. I've been going to mosque all my life, and I've never thought upon the features that you highlighted and how they symbolize different things and also contribute towards sustainability. So once again, that was amazing. I have one question, but that is not relevant to the mosque. I was just looking back to the hall again and again, how you added the stories up there. So I was just curious that how the foundation worked for it. Did you know that the foundation was capable of bearing the stories above? or did you test it for that?
Oh, we had to test the soil. But what happened is we had to cut the concrete slabs and dig for the foundation that would take the columns that would carry the structure that you see here. So it was a micro foundation, a micro columns, just tried to fit. The challenge was in the ground floor, you have these huge auditoriums. Right? And you cannot just drop a column there, and what it means to people sitting, the vision, and all of that stuff. So we had to carefully to kind of tilt this building and move the structure, and the spanning between columns and all of that. So it was kind of carefully planned. So that's the way that we'll be able to arrange it.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think that question actually segues to something that I was wondering about. You provided a really fantastic introduction to these elements of Islamic architecture and mosque architecture. And I was wondering, just in your own work, in the book that you started by describing, do you find that you're influenced by these other elements that you presented on, and if so, how?
That's very good questions. Definitely the whole notion of materials they use. Okay, that kind of determines how that your building is going to attack. I always feel bad when I see glass blocks, somewhere in Chicago. It's the same thing, same building is being built, the same design in Dubai when it's 115 degrees in the summertime. You feel bad that this really does not reflect. You working against nature. The biggest thing that I got out of this was don't work against nature. Work with it. Make it work for you. Or take advantage of it. I think that's the beauty about it. On the north side, you don't have a direct sun. So what kind of functions you have there? When you orient your building east, west, this is the best orientation for sun exposure, the heat gain, all of that stuff, wintertime, summertime. And also, how can you make your landscape complement your building? You have all of these nice, beautiful trees that are going to lose the leaves. So in the wintertime, when they have the sun's lower angle, so take advantage of a direct sun coming in. Then when the summer comes with the sun up in the sky, you have full leaves. So this becomes a shading element for you. When it comes down to your design. So to answer your questions, the most important part was what kind of materials you use, how you orient your building, what it means, what it means to the facilities that you're trying to build. Yes.
So I'm not sure if this is something you would know about, but okay, so you mentioned about the dome, how you would walk into a mosque and there would be a dome pointing upwards, versus a mosque that's just like this room where it's like a flat square. Now, having entered a mosque such as that with a dome, would there be like this essence of the divine being, you feel that it's there? Is that why they usually do that?
Why they use the
Like they would enter into a mosque. There's a big hall with
Yes.
and you feel like you're connected with a God or a God.
Yeah, the elements again, it depends on where you are. For example, up here in the United States, you get minus 30 degrees in the winter time. You're not going to have anything apart. You're not going to have a courtyard inside your mosque. That's for sure. You might have an element, outside, like a garden or a place that people can use it when the weather permits. But again, you do your architectural design, you have to consider all the elements. You're not just copy and paste. And this may be the beauty about the mosques that you have seen. It's not a copy and paste. It's not I've seen this mosque here. Yeah, you see this mosque here? We have a different version of it in Cairo, and she went and visited that. But it has the same elements, the same looks, but it has that little variations. The one in Cairo is sitting on a hillside. So how can you take advantage? You have a huge whole balcony that overlooks the entire city. Things like that, it really kind of helps and add to what you're trying to design, not just cut and paste.
And for the question for the gentleman over there, I am a student of Richard Harlow.
Yes.
It is ISS 315 Global Diversity and Culture Studies. So
Thank you very much.
Oh, he knows it better than me. This is great. Anything else? Yes.
not familiar with architecture at all, but your presentation was awesome. After you get done with your vision and it's built, how much time do you take to reflect and watch the people interact with the way you built it in your vision to begin with? Like, how much satisfaction do you get in knowing that this is what you thought, or maybe it was opposite, or some things were different than what you thought was going to happen?
This is really the beauty about architecture. As an architect, I designed the place, and I'm there before anybody else goes to that building. And my satisfaction when I walk inside the building, this is not the first time I've been here. I've been here the day before, during the design. And seeing that, and I've been here at Architect, Michigan State University, very proud of the elements that we have introduced to campus, how that fits the fabric of campus itself. What does it add? Beyond just we're going to have a classroom, we're going to have an office, or it's what else have that added to our campus. So that's, and the beauty about it also, I can bring my children, grandchildren, and tell them, this is the building that I built, this is what I did. I was working with some, office work, and nobody saw it, when I was done. So to answer your question, very satisfying, when it comes down to the profession itself, what do you do? Yes.
It seems the great architect, the late Zaha Hadid,
The museum that we have here on campus, we had a $45 million budget for that. We received the hair design, it went up to $115 million. And we had to work and see how can we bring this. We still can keep the shape, but and the form and the function inside, but have a different elements, how you build it. And we actually did that, believe it or not. So it was very interesting process. How she had this whole shape that you have seen, that would be the structure. The outside would be a structure as a tier that would hold the building. Now we ended up actually having concrete that holds the building, and the street outside just like a rain screen instead. So that helped with the cost tremendously. Yes.
Just one more question about that process, choosing the design for the broad. Was the competition at all close, or did the committee all push for the one choice?
They really like Zaha Hadid history. Having a signature architect on your campus is an add-on. So that element was there. The donor was part of the selection. We liked her work, and he liked what she actually did. It was very unique. And we selected this part of campus, even though this is a historical part of campus, that building doesn't belong there. But they wanted to give the most exposure to being on Grand River. Anybody that you don't have to come through campus, you can be driving by, but you still can see that beauty building, standing out there. Yes.
So some of the things that you talked about with kind of the South Korean buildings, with the clock tower and Mecca, is within the architecture profession, is there are different ethical guidelines or movements for architecture that actually does, enhance community and human life rather than diminish it?
One nice thing here in the process of building in the United States is usually engage people. You have the public hearings, all of that stuff. Here on campus, we are self-governed. We don't have to go as a city of East Lansing to approve our projects. But in general, when you build a building, if I'm a neighbor, if I'm a developer, if I'm a supplier, a contractor, they'd like to get their input. And they try to look to that, people that are not just looking at the initial element of building a new building, but rather they look at it and say, well, how this building is stand there? What does it take to maintain it and operate it? What does it mean in terms of parking, influence on others? Actually, the shade and shadow of that building on surroundings, all of that gets to be part of the whole process. So you try to get the public involved in it. And the best way that I've seen it was always just more communication. So make sure you communicate with your neighbors. Make sure that people get excited about what's being built, or raise their hand if they have an issue with it, so you might be able to mitigate it. So to answer your questions, yes, people's input to what's going on is important. Here on campus, we have a once a month we have, we call it construction junction, where we tell people what's happening on campus, the status of projects that we're working on, where they are, and what's coming down the pipe. So people, if they have any questions, they can raise their hand. Yes.
No question. So in a design like that that has many minarets, which obviously points to the sky, in terms of function, are different minarets used for different days of prayer or hours of the day of prayer, or or is one used for the chanter and the other ones are just for looks?
This particular one is really big at a time where it was just the looks of it. Microphone came and changed the way that we develop, how things were going to. So this came in and now we can be a mile away and you still can hear some of the prayer, with that. So it's not like they would make the call on each one. And the elements here is how this would affect, again, the looks and the feel of the building, and where is it for the building itself? How is that element of vertical versus horizontal, and what it would look like at the end.
So it's a design element, not a function element.
But at this point, in this particular one, yes.
The example is Taj Mahal.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
The reflection of all the Islamic architecture
Yes,
in the Masurian and all other things.
yeah,
We don't use minaret there for azan,
yeah.
but just for
But
architecture,
it looks,
beauty.
you're touching on a very important subject. Designers studied the human body, okay, and the proportion of that human body. What happens if you have shorter legs and longer? So sometimes they would look at the building. And Taj Mahal is a great example of human scale when it comes down to how they had the proportion of the building, the height, the width, and all of that stuff. So that's part being taught to sometimes to the student architectural students is understanding the proportion and what does that mean for the overall, look. The first thing I remember in my first project when I was studying architecture is understand how your building height with the width would really affect the overall looks of the design.
We take one last question.
Just you didn't mention about our Islamic Center.
I had actually more slides. I felt that I would run out of time before. I actually had slides here for the Islamic Center. Just show people what it looks from inside. Very simple room for the prayer. Not a lot of stuff on the walls or anything that distracts you from that function, of the prayer. So.
Do you want to sneak in a question?
Yeah, if anybody else wants it, it's just a comment I want to make. So, as a student of sustainability, I really want to look at mosques as an institution that does not only support the environmental sustainability, but also goes for the financial and most importantly the social sustainability. Mosque was supposed to be a place for all the community to come together, to listen to each other, to celebrate together, and also to share their griefs. So there were institutions attached with the mosques like that. And the second comment was that there's another feature in mosques normally, because everybody's sitting and facing the Kaaba, there's a feature wall that is everybody keeps looking at, so that increases the significance of that. And I remember back in Pakistan, in Islamabad, there's a mosque, Faisal Mosque, and it has a feature wall which is beautifully calligraphed by the most famous calligrapher of Pakistan, Sadiq Khan. And the architect that designed this mosque was Turkish, but he left that wall there for a painter to paint because the significance of it was so much.
Very good. Well, please join me in thanking our speaker, Amr Abdel-Azim. Thank you so much. And I hope if you're not on our listserv, please sign up. We have a sign-up sheet over there, and we'll have hopefully many very interesting events in the spring. So, thank you. There are some events we are co-sponsoring. I should mention, because of the recent shooting in Pittsburgh, there is going to be an anti-Semitism panel that we're co-sponsoring. It's going to be on Monday at 5, I believe. But in any case, we have a listserv, and we'll get those announcements and other, So, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.